Okay, it is recording, it says. But did it record the other one? I don't know. I don't know how to pose for thumbnails. I feel like my thumbnails are all ridiculous because I don't know how to pose. So here. Okay, hi. This is a witch's guide to entrepreneurship and starting a business. Part one of many, because there are like endless articles and courses and master's degrees and journals and oh my God, so much stuff out there about entrepreneurship. Like there's whole sections in the bookstore for a reason. It's an endless topic. There's lots of different thoughts on it. This is just some of mine. So if you don't vibe with what I'm about to talk about and say, that's okay, I'm sure you can find something else that does. Now, why should you listen to me? Well, hi, I'm Bree. I'm the Work Witch. I do product consulting and business advisory services from the perspective of a witch. So I throw in a lot of magic and tarot and self-actualization and inner fulfillment and ethics into the whole process. And I do that because that's been like my whole life. My mom literally came home from giving birth to my elder sister. Sasha only had a few weeks of like time off that she could afford. And when she dropped my elder sister off at daycare, like on her first day back to work, she got to her desk and was like, I can't do this. And went home and started a business. She had no college degree. Both her and my dad didn't even finish high school and figured it out. So I kind of grew up in this entrepreneurial home environment. And it was very obviously pro entrepreneurship, but also I got a lot of hands-on like practice on actually helping manage things and working for my mom and seeing all the things that it took. And then I carried that into my career. I've started a couple businesses of my own. I am currently co-founding a couple of apps, which is really exciting. I do the business advisory thing through the Work Witch, but prior to that, I was working in startups in a B2B capacity as a product leader. So a lot of my job was not just selling our business and developing the business of the startup, but also helping our customers spin up businesses. So this is something I'm very used to talking about. I'm also getting my MBA from a top business school, so I have access to all of the very conventional, but also really good business advice. But, the reason I want to give you the witchy version is I do think that there's a lot left out of all of that advice, which is what we're going to focus on. I have a bit of a long introduction for you, but it's important, and then we'll get into the serious bits. So this is going to be the first in many videos. I don't want to bombard you with too much on starting a business and entrepreneurship because I know that's not really for everybody. And a lot of us just want to figure out how to make our work lives less soul crushing. We want to figure out how to get our creative projects off the ground when we have like a 9-to-5 plus commute. That's crazy. So I don't want to bombard you with entrepreneurship content if that's not what you're looking for. But if it is what you're looking for and we want to have like a start a business kind of like summer vibe for this channel, let me know. We can do that too. But the reason I'm starting this now is because I received a specific request to cover this topic. And, I want to dive in because inevitably most of us are going to end up in a position where we're considering entrepreneurship. And I do not subscribe to the idea anymore that entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. I used to agree with that. I used to think it took like a certain kind of mindset or a certain level of like willingness to take risks and ownership. Like even in business school, they give us these like big quizzes and frameworks that we have to fill out about like whether we would like jump out of a plane or whatever to assess our willingness to take a risk and like equate that to our willingness to like be seen and start a business and put an offering into the world. I think for a lot of people, and maybe this is like a feminine way of thinking about business or whatever, I don't know, but I really think for a lot of us, the like call to entrepreneurship can come from a few places. It can come from either a need for self-actualization, where we want to have control over how we express our joy, our creativity, where we want to have control over our labor and our energetic resources. Or it can come from a place of feeling like we have to pursue entrepreneurship because we have health concerns where we cannot handle a 40-hour work week plus commute because of our health issues, or we have caregiving responsibilities that prevent us from committing to a full-time role, or maybe you've moved and you're somewhere where your industry is not and you have to work with what you have to make some money. So it can be this like inner calling, it can be like this desire to like self-actualize, or it can come from a need to survive in this world. Entrepreneurship can be sparked by really anything. But there's a part of me that does still agree that entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. And the part of me that still agrees with that is this idea that, the timing isn't going to be right now for everyone. I'm not suggesting that you watch this video and then go start a business necessarily. Maybe you can, maybe now's a good time for you, but maybe now is not. Employment in a business, a corporation, the public sector, it does a lot for us as people, right? When we join a team, when we join a collective toward a shared goal, we learn a lot about ourselves. We learn from the people that we work with. We have different perspectives that we have to be around. We have to learn to get our voice heard, to propose ideas. And especially when you're employed, you're going to find out about talents or skills that you didn't know you had and wouldn't have found out about if you weren't employed, right? I wouldn't have discovered a lot about myself. Like, I wouldn't be anywhere where I am right now at all if I hadn't joined a startup and like maybe overcommitted myself a little bit to it for a number of years. But the personal development phase of that experience really clicked for me when I was looking for a new role. And I was on LinkedIn and I was on all these recruiting websites. And I had this like mental block where I was like, I have no desire to audition myself for these other jobs. Like, I just didn't want to do that. And that came from a sense of like knowing how the game is like super AI driven now. And there's like, you have to like basically just, you're lucky to get an interview. That's one piece that was bugging me. But the bigger piece that was really bugging me was this idea that like, I've already proven myself to myself and I had a lot of confidence in what I knew how to do. And I didn't really feel like auditioning myself to like prove that right now. Maybe I will again in the future, right? Like, I have no issue with going back to employment in the future. But right now it just made sense of, I'm just going to start doing my own thing, which, you know, coming back to timing briefly, and I know this is a super long introduction, forgive me, but, you know, I think all of us have a unique medicine that we are positioned to offer the world, whether it is a talent or a skill or a service we can provide, a healing that we can provide, just a way that we can organize people, a way that we do leadership. Like, we all have something that we can offer the world, and it makes sense to package that up at some point in your life. And I don't want to say capitalize on it because it's not really what it is, right? Offer it to the world in a way that sits right with your spirit, right? An exchange of value that you are in control of. Because essentially that's what employment is they take your skills, your talents, your ideas, your problem solving, your leadership, and put it toward this other goal, which often is very like just profit for profit's sake, right? Profit driven. Not a lot of us have the opportunity to be in like impact driven spaces or companies. And that can just suck. And when you do something for yourself, you have an opportunity to pursue what you want to do on your terms. So how do we approach business the witchy way? How are we already 9 minutes into this? Oh my God. Long introduction finished. The first ingredient to entrepreneurship or starting your own business is to completely change your mindset on how you see yourself. This is hard. This is practice. Don't wait to get this perfect before you actually start your business. Just kind of continuously come back to this idea that you are a magician now. Okay? You're an alchemist. I think magician is really effective though, because the idea is that you need to work with everything you've got, everything available to you, all of the support systems, all of the people, mentors, collaborators, resources in your network, all of the experiences that you've had, all of the interesting skills that you think you probably could develop if you had the time, right? You have to see yourself as a magician in the way that a magician sees the world, okay? And if you're not really sure what I'm talking about here, have you seen Lord of the Rings? Okay, Gandalf is a great example. Do you think that guy literally like walked into those situations with a plan? His whole thing was having no plan. He had a goal, but he had no plan. He just worked with what he had in the moment to respond to the situation. You are the same thing now, okay? Have a goal. Be flexible about how you get there. Once you see yourself as a magician or creator, alchemist or something, it's a lot easier, I think, to then start seeing the world as a creative space that welcomes your creativity, okay? Because fundamentally, starting a business is about solving a problem for people, okay? If you want your business to be successful, to support you, to put food on the table for you and your family, you need to be solving a problem for someone. And lots of people are interested in solving problems in different ways, and no problem only has one viable solution, right? So whatever problem you've identified that you want to solve, you can come up with at least 3 creative solutions to that and start to kind of figure out what your business might be. But I noticed that a lot of people who, for example, do Instagram art or something, and I'm one of those people. I once upon a time sold my art on Instagram and Etsy. Art sales are tricky. Creativity sales are tricky. Any sort of artistic sales are tricky because you need to put a narrative around the works in order for those works to feel like they have a purpose in the customer's life. I might not even touch this, actually. We're not going to touch this. We're going to come back to this. Okay, I almost start going on a very unscripted thing about why it's so difficult to sell art online if you're a creative type and sell your creativity because it's not immediately clear what the problem that you're solving is. That would end up taking this whole video or adding like 15 minutes. So I'm going to talk about that in the future. We're going to hold that. Okay, so back to you being a magician with a paintbrush, maybe. Back to you being a magician, okay? Here is the second half of the mindset shift that you need to take, okay? You are not a founder, an entrepreneur, or business owner, whatever. You're a magician, you're creating something, okay? Now, next thing. Your business is a garden, okay? Most business frameworks will treat any venture, any business idea, like a machine. Like you put in certain outputs and you're almost guaranteed a good result, right? As if you can analyze the market to death, as if you can do enough customer discovery and analysis and data collection to make sure that you have reduced risk to the point where success is all but inevitable. But businesses are not machines, and outcomes are not necessarily predictable. Businesses are ecosystems, okay? They have collaborators, they have cross-pollinators, they have pests. Most importantly, they have surprises. So I want you to think about the business that you're starting as a garden that you're going to tend to over time, not as a static thing that you're going to create and put into the world. So that's why you should really raise an eyebrow at all of those things that teach you, like if you just build a course and sell it, everything will be fine. Because no, there's a whole garden that course needs to exist within. Gardens require a completely different approach than an assembly line. Some seeds will sprout in days. Others will take like multiple seasons to see something happen. There are conditions that you can influence and control, but there's also crazy weather and droughts. When we think about gardens and successful farmers and just agriculture in general and like the human endeavor to like make our mark on the landscape, right? We know that what makes humans really, really good at this is that they are observers first and interventionists second. So you need to get like scary good at observing your target customer, the problem space you're working in, and really understanding it in a holistic context in the same way that a farmer might look at the wider context of their crop, of their ecosystem, the same way a gardener will understand the ecosystem that they're putting together in their backyard. What I mean by that is that like everything is connected, right? In the same way that the quality of the water affects the quality of the soil, affects the quality of the produce, affects the quality of the flowers, and whether the flowers even bloom at the right time to attract pollinators at the right time for the crops that yield fruits to even be pollinated, right? There's so many different things at play in a garden, and your business is going to be much the same way. You need to have an understanding of the right sort of timings to prioritize, the right sort of people to be in collaboration and relationship with, where you need to maybe experiment and recognize that you've made the wrong decisions, that you need to try something different. So the same is all true for your business. And so the framework that I want you to start with if you're considering starting your business is this one: gather, create, offer. This is different from the traditional like build, launch, scale model because that's quite linear, right? You build it, you launch it, you scale it. As if that's all gonna just work out. No, we're gonna get more organic here. The gathering phase, this is the roots of it all. This is where you're collecting like what are your raw materials? What are the resources available to your business? Kind of things that we talked about at the beginning. Here you are gathering skills and knowledge, both from your own expertise, but also identifying what it is that you need to go and learn, right? Like I was uncomfortable when I faced the facts that I needed to go learn some basic financial accounting skills, but it's a reality. You need to look at the people and relationships that you need to gather. What sort of early supporters, mentorships, collaborators do you need? What sort of tools and systems do you need to gather? Everything from like technology systems or like your WordPress website or Squarespace or whatever, all the way to your spiritual practices. How are you going to make sure that just like a gardener or a farmer, you're rising with the sun and getting out there every day? Like what is your why? How are you taking care of yourself? And then also stories and wisdom, right? Your experiences, the knowledge that you are handed down from your ancestors or that you gather from your community, like that is not only going to fuel you, but it's also going to translate into how you're running your business and the stories that you tell about it. So you can be a hermit about this, but not forever, okay? A lot of this is inner work. A lot of this is a lot of reflection. A lot of shadow work is going to come up. You see people talk about this all the time, that when you start a business, it is an icky thing to face all of the things in yourself that you didn't even realize were there, your blocks, your armors, your fears, your doubts. So there's a tricky balance here because I want you to know that you don't need to be a first mover for your opportunity to work out, okay? There's like this myth that a first mover in an industry or for a market opportunity is going to be more successful. That's not true. The data shows that actually it is the businesses or services or products that improve upon the old ones that are statistically more likely to be successful. So you have permission to be slow, both for the market timing reason, but also for the are you ready for this reason? Have you got all your mental ducks in a row reasons? But it's tricky because you could also be really tempted to kind of get hanged man about it, right? And just linger and be there and feel like you're never ready and over prepare. So again, the gardener is always observing the garden, always observing what pests are coming in, the weather patterns, whether a different species of bee is here this year, taking pictures of the butterflies and the birds that are visiting this spring versus last spring. You are always going to be observing and gathering and understanding your resources available to you. So you don't need to be like feeling like this cycle is over, but you need to get that moving and get that as part of your routine before you can go to the next phase, which is create. Creating is about growth. It is the experimental heart of your garden, okay? And you're going to create a lot of things that are going to fail or not work out or be like lost Google documents. But that's the point. This is all about the seeds that you gather, that you test, that you play with. I want you to think of yourself again as that magician. You are here to play and experiment. You are planting seeds, you're testing ideas and creating different prototypes. You're going to continue tending to what's growing, nurture what works, and compost what doesn't. And when I say compost what doesn't, I mean like every failure, you have learned something from it. So write down a few of those lessons that you learned whenever you sunset something or leave an idea. Write down what that taught you, what exploring that taught you, so you can reference that in the future and know it was never a waste of time. Learning the seasons of your space that you're working in, whether you are selling paintings on Instagram or whether you are building an app in the ed tech space, you need to understand the timing and cycles and patience levels and buying cycles of the people in that space, okay? You need to understand that. So what are the seasons of your space? And then lastly, the conditions for growth. You need to be on top of those, okay? What sort of systems, habits, what does the optimal environment look like? What is your actual workspace? Are you going to be in a co-working space? Are you going to make over your office, okay? Are you going to dedicate a certain area of your living room to house an altar to your vision? Create all kinds of things, okay? A lot of people get lost in this phase, and that's why I'm spending the least amount of time on it, because the next most important piece is offering it to the world, putting it out there. Yes, this is selling. And as someone who hates to sell, I get it. I love to market other people's things. I love to sell other people. I have a hard time selling my own things. So this next bit is also advice to myself when I edit this back. I want you to think of selling in the same way that a flower does. Literally, like a flower. We know that flowers have evolved to be the way they are to attract pollinators, to attract bees. Okay, they do so without apology. They're gorgeous, they bloom, they light up the world. Or you could think of it as the same way that a farmer has like a farm stand on the end of his driveway offering fresh peaches or something, okay? It's about sharing the fruits of your garden and being unapologetic about the value, the beauty, the interesting thing that you've made. Even if nobody wants it, that's okay. You've still made something beautiful and you can show up in the next cycle of your season with the next thing. When we sell and when we offer, we are creating value exchanges that should be nourishing both parties, especially if your product or your offer is built on just creating value or recycling value rather than extracting value. You really don't need to feel icky about selling because you can be confident that what you're putting back is equal to what you are receiving. And the offer phase is also about building relationships, right? It's not just about transactions. Coming back to this ecosystem idea, when they have left with your offer, they're not gone. They're somewhere in the ecosystem now, and they're part of your community, part of your ecosystem. And that means that sharing your abundance maintains your garden's health and is in benefit to everyone who's in your ecosystem, including your collaborators, your mentors, and your customers. That is my gather, create, and offer breakdown for you. And before I finish this, I do want to end with like a warning that if you are pursuing entrepreneurship in the sense that you're going to be pursuing investment and getting investors, whether it's pre-seed or some other financing, you're going to have a harder time with this. And that's because conventional business advice and business books might sometimes have a poetic language around business that is similar to everything you just heard me say. But in reality, they do want linearity. They do want linear or compounding or exponential growth. And that's because they want a return on investment. They want profits. Even though I'm like a startup girly, like I don't believe that everything needs to be built with the idea of scaling indefinitely. I don't think that makes sense. I don't think it's sustainable. And I don't think it's actually how most entrepreneurs view their offering or their business. So, you can't gather everything and create everything and sell everything all at once. It's important to be slow and mindful and thoughtful. But if you're going to get investors, I really encourage that you make sure that they are aligned with you spiritually on what it is that you are trying to build, why, and how you imagine it looking not just in the first year, but 3 and 5 years down the line. They're also going to want some sort of exit strategy, most likely. And if it's a labor of your love, you might not want to have an exit strategy in place or exit, in mind. So with gather, create, offer, you are cycling through all three all of the time. When you're offering your services or your product, you're also gathering new skills. You're getting interesting feedback. You need to also tend to your existing offers while you're also having lots of new ideas. You can't just abandon the ones you've already offered the world because a new seed is in your hand. You need to take care of the flowers in front of you now that are in bloom and need water. And while you're gathering your resources, you might discover you have something that's already ready to offer. Maybe you'll come across something you already made years ago that actually now you feel confident putting it back out into the world with a few tweaks. My point is that business and entrepreneurship is messy, it is seasonal, it is a living thing, it is a creative pursuit. So in the next video on businesses, I'm going to get a bit more specific on the to-do lists that are going to hit you and how to organize them in a way that makes you not go up the wall with overwhelm. Everything from financial statements to customer discovery, market research to building out your actual hard drive systems and keeping everything organized to your marketing plan, all of that, how to keep all of that organized in a way that feels intuitive and aligned with your spirit, because ultimately what you're creating is coming from your spirit. And that's why a witchy way to think about this stuff is, I think, helpful, because it doesn't ask that to step aside. But because that video is going to be in a couple weeks, if you're kind of interested in understanding what I'm talking about now, I do have a blog post that is basically very similar, where I'm applying this elemental framework to your existing business or workplace. So you can take a look through that and maybe gather some inspiration there. But otherwise, I'll see you in a couple weeks with the details on applying that to entrepreneurship. I also have a lot of ISIS content coming up and an announcement that I'm very excited about. I can't even look at the camera. I'm so excited. I'm so overwhelmed with joy. Speaking of offerings to the world and selling unapologetically, I'm working on a Scorpion medicine course. It is deeply channeled from the goddess Isis. I have just been in full, I'm getting goosebumps on my head as I'm talking about it. I've just been in this deep connection with her myths, her stories, the way that now that I've had about a year between now and when I left my last job, I'm processing how much I went through and all the things it taught me, and how grateful I am for all the anger I felt, the very toxic people that I worked with, the unethical behaviors I had to witness and file grievances against people. I had to get people fired in a couple of situations. It's a lot, okay? It's a lot. And I've been processing that for a while, but in processing it with Isis, it just hit different. And I've figured out a way to bring that to you. So I'm building an email course, very relaxed, no pressure, get a few emails from me a week for a few weeks, about 6 weeks kind of course, all about turning the scorpion stings of corporate life, of our professional life, into medicine and putting them as fuel for our creative and our spiritual growth, building our leadership capacity, and facing a world that is frankly full of broken systems and broken people. And we have to do something about it. We can't just leave the world in this state, right? We have to do something. We have to put some good wherever we're at. I'm very, very excited. My goal is to launch it on, I'm looking at the calendar, it is June 23rd today. My goal is to launch it on August 12th because that is like the mythical day of Isis's tears flooding the Nile, and it's like very potent energetically for her. Obviously, our calendar is not the ancient Egyptian calendar, so that date could just be a best guess. It probably is. But it's mostly agreed upon, so I'm going to just go ahead and agree with the scholars that I'm not an Egyptologist, so I'm going to just let them tell me when the special day for Isis is and go with it. So if you're interested in that, I do have a wait list available, and you can just like go over there, give me your email, and I'll let you know when it's actually like live for you to register and purchase if you'd like to. Signing up for the wait list does not put any pressure on you to actually buy it if you're just kind of like wanting to keep an eye on what this becomes. Otherwise, I have a lot of other Isis content that I want to be making and putting on YouTube. So I'm scripting a lot of stuff. Some of it's just for the course. Some of it is going to be for here. But if there's anything specific that you would like me to talk about in relation to the goddess Isis, let me know. Put it in the comments. I read everything and I will incorporate that in a future video. Or if you want to keep this entrepreneur vibes for the summer, we can do this till like September 1st. All right, with that, thank you so much for sitting with me for this very long video. I very much appreciate it. The next one will probably be even longer, unfortunately, because this elemental framework and going through all the different parts of running your business is going to be really tricky. We're also going to go through, oh, there's like a bug in here. We're also going to go through how to evaluate your business idea and make sure that it's not a total waste of your time. Not that it would be a complete waste of your time. We learn a lot by pursuing things, but you know, there's a balance between a foolish endeavor and learning a lot from it in the joyous process of the foolish endeavor versus seeing a there that isn't there, you know? So we're going to talk about that too. Have a wonderful week. Don't let anyone treat you like shit. And I will see you later. Bye.